to our panel and bring Dr. Laura in. Dr. Laura McNeil joins us today, along with Bernardo Ilona, and both legal analysts who can speak to this issue. What about the trigger warnings? Anybody, Bernardo, you want to take that? That Laura said you don't see that often. When we start there and then get into some of the evidence that may be there, what do you think of that?
Absolutely. Like Laura stated, I have never seen a trigger warning on the first page of a complaint. Hey, you don't even see that in criminal cases on an indictment when it's filed. So I think that was more of course, to get fair warning of what's contained in the document, but also by the attorneys to show that, look, this is a serious case. This is the case that will shock the conscience. Come on, let's be real. These are explosive allegations against Sean Puffy Combs. But we have to remember that this is a civil case having to deal with monetary damages, as opposed to a criminal case having to deal with the life or liberty of Mr. Combs.
How does that affect it then, Laura, the fact that it is a civil case? I mean, what would that, in terms of the evidence that we should be looking at, in terms of the burden of proof here, with civil case versus criminal case in a situation like this with such serious charges?
Yeah, so it's a very different scenario here. You're going to have a much lower burden of proof to prove your case in a civil setting, which only requires preponderance of the evidence. So more likely than not, as opposed to a criminal case where you're going to have a higher burden of proof, which is going to be beyond reasonable doubt. So in this situation, it's kind of interesting because usually you have the reverse. You typically have criminal charges filed and then a civil case pursues. And so it'll be very interesting to see whether or not this triggers possible criminal investigation into this as well. Right,
one could lead to the other. What about the defense side of how they might handle it, Bernard? I know the Diddy team has basically been saying, hey, there was an extortion attempt made here. How might that play into it?
Yeah, so far, his attorneys actually issued a statement where he denies these allegations. So what the next steps that's going to happen is that they have to answer this complaint. They have about 3 weeks to answer the complaint unless there's going to be an extension that is granted. And in that answer, what we should expect to see is that, of course, Puffy's going to say that he denies each and every one of these allegations. And then after that, I assume that what his attorneys are going to do is file a motion for a summary judgment where they're going to ask the judge to dismiss this case on the papers alone, that this case should not go forward in a court of law and there should not be a trial. I highly doubt that that will be granted. What we should expect to see this is that a long drawn out case, whether there'll be settlement discussions, but it's already been said by Cassie's attorneys that they turned down an 8-figure settlement. But in terms of credibility, all of this is going to boil down to credibility. Puffy's going to have to argue, did it happen? Did it not happen? Or was it a consensual act, all of these acts that are being alleged in this case?
Well, there's so many things that have been alleged. I mean, Laura went through a lot of this, but I'll put some of the allegations back up on the screen in the lawsuit. I mean, this, and, Bernardo, you made this point, but Dr. Laura will ask you about it, how serious this is. Raped Miss Ventura at her own home, often punched, beat, kicked, and stomped on Miss Ventura. Blew up a man's car after he learned he was romantically interested in Miss Ventura. On and on it goes. Forced her to engage in sex acts with male sex workers, as Laura Engel was talking about. Ran out of his apartment with a firearm in pursuit of a rival industry executive. Demanded that she carry his firearm. Introduced her to a lifestyle of excessive alcohol and substance abuse. So, this is, there are a lot, Dr. Laura, of allegations in the one case. And to go back to the point you made, some of this, is you're saying, could turn into a criminal problem for Diddy.
Absolutely. I mean, to say that these charges shock the conscience is an understatement. And again, these are alleged charges, but if they are proven true, I would find it very surprising, to be quite honest, even before this case gets to trial, if the New York prosecutor does not start investigating this case. And this is assuming that there's not an ongoing investigation going. I don't believe that there are, based on a statement that was released by the New York PD. But again, to hear this level, sex trafficking, sexual abuse, violations of New York's gender-motivated law, these are some pretty serious allegations. And so I think that we should expect, if it isn't already happening, a criminal investigation as well.
All right, Dr. Laura McNeil is a legal analyst who lectures at Columbia University. Bernardo Villalobos also with us, legal analyst, criminal defense attorney, and former prosecutor. Thanks to you both. Thanks so much for watching. Just go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.